By me, Rosa Ellis. It was written and produced by Zach Brophy. The story editor was Emma Harding. Alice McKee was the assistant producer. Our producer in Berlin was Sabine Sherek. Klaus Fuchs was played by Marcus Calvin. Original music was composed by Trevor Gorekis.
And the effects of that are going to be felt for some time to come, because this is an area that is extremely important for agricultural production and industry. The Indus River, which is the river that's flooded in this case, is the main artery really that flows through Pakistan, and of course draws lots of people to it for that reason. The Indus River flows through some arid and semi-arid and hyper-arid areas, so that water is really important.
Why are people so fascinated about destroying homes, severing transport links, even if the waters don't cover everywhere and even if they recede very quickly? So of course, a district doesn't need to be completely underwater before local authorities declare that it has been hit by a calamity. Whether the minister could have been clearer with her statement is a question loyal listeners will want to ponder. And that's it for this edition of More or Less. Please keep your questions and comments coming in to moreorless@bbc.co.
Wszyscy byli już na miejscu. 20 paru mężczyzn stało w kręgu. Ich płeć można było ocenić jedynie po ogólnej posturze.
Były odbierane, że są barbarzyńskie, było zabraniane.
Tatuaż był tępiony jako element kultury obcej, kultury związanej z religią, której chcemy się pozbyć, no bo niesiemy teraz tę właściwą niedugą.
Tak, dokładnie. Przede wszystkim tatuaż jest widzialny na ciele, więc on jest stałą emanacją pewnego systemu wierzeń. Też bardzo ciekawe, no bo z jednej strony nasi przodkowie zabraniali tego innym osobom, a teraz my współcześnie szukamy i tatuujemy sobie te motywy.
Historia przypomina pajęczynę, ten jest
Nie, to jest jeden motyw solarny z Azji, natomiast wyszło około 14 godzin pojedynczej sesji. Ale to była malutka igiełka.
Nie przysypiał pan?
Nie.
Ból przytomary?
Nie, akurat nie. Ten ból to jest też tak, że on jest uzależniony od nas samych, tak? Każdy ma inny próg bólu w różnych miejscach. Jest inny dla różnych osób. Spotkałem takie, że po prostu mogą wejść pod największą igłę i nic się nie dzieje, a taki są nic.
Przemysław Biskup, czy to było podstawą również jej popularności w narodzie?
Myślę, że ogólnie taka postawa, tak. Ale to jest dokładnie też to, czego w sumie tak naprawdę system brytyjski wymaga od swojego monarcha. Królowa, pamiętajmy, taka jest forma konstytucyjna, panuje, ale nie rządzi. Królowa ma symbolizować jedność państwa ponad podziałami, a więc zajmowanie wyraźnie.
Niektórzy tak uważają, ale ich oburzenie gasi mocniejszy argument. Otóż kobieta wydana za zwyrodnialca, który odebrał jej cześć, pozostaje przy życiu. Jeśli odmówi ślubu, straci życie, zamordowana honorowo przez ojca lub braci, bo to ona przecież odbiera cześć rodzinie. Podobną dobrą radę głosił pewien rosyjski zespół punk rockowy w swoistej arii gwałciciela, wyjątkowo obrzydliwej. Podoba się czy nie, wytrzymaj, cierp, moja krasawico. Tę strofkę, adresując ją do Ukrainy, cytował publicznie Władimir Putin tuż przed lutową inwazją. I on dalej recytuje frazy o swojej wspaniałomyślności limitowanej, interesownej, podstępnej i posępnej. Z kilku zachodnich stolic jakby dochodziły głosy do wtóru. Może to tylko omamy.
Będzie
pushed back to 2025. That's still 3 years ahead of schedule.
Original schedule, yes.
The original schedule, and nobody ever thought that the 2024 thing was realistic. That's like, this is just nothing. They're like, okay, sure, right, but they knew
Politically it sounded good, but
never
not
gonna-
realistic.
Yeah. So, all right, we're still on track to get back to the moon by the middle of this decade, and hopefully, the SLS will work out. Artemis will launch. It's obviously I'd rather have them scrub for 6 weeks and have the thing blow up. Productions dedicated to promoting science and critical thinking. For more information, visit us at theskepticsguide.org. Send your questions to info@theskepticsguide.org. And if you would like to support the show and all the work that we do, go to patreon.com/skepticsguide and consider becoming a patron and becoming part of the SGU community. Our listeners and supporters are what make SGU possible.
Hello, and welcome to the podcast. My name is Ewa Pospieszyńska. I think it's the first time I said my full name, and now abortion access and abortion rights in Poland. But we will be situating this discussion in a broader context, especially in light of what have been recently happening in US. And we're joined by Martyna Jałoszyńska, who's a Polish socialist feminist and a very impressive organizer who was at the forefront of the protests that were happening in Poland in 2020.
Fucking more, and unfortunately, this man that found out told the police, and that's why she's facing the trial. This is like the bit different situation. But there were 2 hearings during the second one. They decided it will be postponed to October. And she has large support from Poland, from other countries, from many feminist activists. Abortion Dream Team claims to help around 100 women.
To Strada and the rest of the families, the organizations, governments and individuals that supported the 9/11 hijackings were getting away with murder. On the list of defendants in the lawsuit, Sudan was the odd one out. No participant in the attacks was Sudanese, and while the majority of those listed were either Saudi institutions or individuals, Sudan was the only sovereign country.
I mogłam też znaleźć się na chwilę w ich pokojach, zobaczyć jak mieszkają kobiety, bo do męskich to nie wpuszczano, żeby było wszystko jasne, zobaczyć jak działają te miejsca od środka, jakie ciekawe robią się tam podziały, że na przykład nigdy się nie zdarza tak, że nie wiem, Nepalki mieszkają z Erytrejkami, oj nie, że tu osobno się robią takie, wiesz, wewnętrzny ten świat się po prostu odbija tam w różnych rzeczach i to jest nieprawdopodobne, bo jak to możliwe, że Rosjanie nie są w stanie Ukraińców powstrzymać? Mówiłeś o sile ukraińskiej armii, o strategii, o uzbrojeniu, o planowaniu, ale myśmy tutaj w powiększeniu rozmawiali o tym, że kontrofensywa się zbliża. Jak to jest możliwe, że rosyjska armia nie była w stanie utrzymać tej swojej linii frontu?
Tak, owszem, to jest przeciwnie i to świadczy, po prostu potwierdza te wielokrotnie już formułowane przez znaczenie podręcznikowo taką wielokrotną, tak zwaną odcinkową przewagę. I znowu już mówiąc obrazowo, po prostu zmietli te pozycje na wschód i północ od Poland.
No właśnie, a propos zmietli, czy nie zmietli, cytowałam tę opinię, a może to jest raczej wyraz nadziei, że Rosjanie wycofują się, a raczej uciekają w popłochu, gubiąc po drodze nie tylko uzbrojenie, ale nawet pokazywano film, gdzie rosyjski czołg jedzie przez wieś. Dokonują cudów strategicznych w zakresie ofensywy wstecznej. Nic tylko czekać, aż się cofną przez most krymski. A pan Sachim pyta, czy Rosjanie gdzieś odbudowali linię frontu, czy też póki co Ukraińcy nacierają swobodnie. Czy wiadomo, w którym punkcie Rosjanie mogą się zatrzymać, a może już gdzieś się zatrzymali?
Na razie taką główną, naturalną linią, na której Rosjanie mogliby próbować odtwarzać linię obrony, jest rzeka Oskol. Ale ta rzeka...
The wheels, let's just say, for cars, and makes it more difficult, makes it a bigger pain in the ass for them, I am all for that. I'm not the city driver's friend.
I love this because you're pulling no punches. I feel like advocates a lot of times are like, look, I understand people need their cars. And you're like, no, fuck it. You don't need a car in the city. You're making the problem worse. You brought this upon yourself.
I still stand by every word I just listened to there. And something happens to people when they're in a car. It happens to me too. I
Conventional notions of masculinity.
My mother raised 5 of us through Cleveland winters with a station wagon. Why the fuck why people suddenly need a basement on 4 wheels is astounding to me. Why you need a vehicle where the hood is taller than my mother. What is this need for these things? Why is everything, are we supersizing abso-fucking-lutely everything? What is this shit?
Of health grants to advise on the regulation of massage, aromatherapy, reflexology, and other complementary therapies. From 1997 to 2003, Michael Meacher, MP for Oldham West and Royton, who was then Environment Secretary, became another of Charles's cabinet allies. At that time, a debate was raging over whether the UK should allow genetically modified crops to be grown commercially in the UK. In 2008, and a lot of people thought so highly of Diana, and her sons have taken on everything she stood for. A popularity poll in June for Conres suggested there could be a profound slump in public affection for the monarchy when Charles takes the reins. He scored 43% approval against the Queen's 63%. One former cabinet minister I spoke to agreed with a widespread view that Charles's relationship with Diana was the biggest factor in public antipathy towards him. Whether they are ready to iron out problems in advance. Yet it is hard to believe, for instance, that Whitehall cleared Charles's comments about the tragedy of the government's slow response in February to the floods in southern England. What's more, they say, King Charles simply won't have as much time to mobilise. The monarch's schedule is weighed down by the daily red box of state papers, investitures and formal meetings with incoming and outgoing diplomats and clergy. That, too, is a growth strategy. I think this was developed by the financial industry and funded by the World Bank. It was something which is promising economic growth, reduction in poverty, environmental gains. At a common sense level, many people might think that blue growth is rather important to poorer coastal communities.
What has been happening is that in the pursuit of growth, you try to maximize efficiency. And maximizing efficiency means
dostaw głównie uzbrojenia wojskowego, jednak tą jedność widać. Te słowa Ursuli von der Leyen, one myślę pokazują jednak pewną postępującą transformację myślenia elit zachodnioeuropejskich na temat Rosji, ale także są efektem szeregu błędów, jakie Rosjanie popełnili w ciągu ostatnich kilku miesięcy, tak? Czy poczynając od samej agresji, zbrodni wojennych na ludności cywilnej, jakie są regularnie popełniane. I tutaj warto zrobić też pewne zastrzeżenie, czy uwagę, że
it's like a 7-minute interview of Harry speaking, and this is where I just thought they all need to get a grip and say nothing when you consider that this man lost his mother in the way that he did when he was a young child. Listen to this, I think it's quite powerful.
Within the first 8 days of our relationship being made public was when it said Harry's girl almost straight out of Compton, and that her exotic DNA
driven around a Balmoral estate, and the driver was Her Majesty the Queen, and the passenger seat was occupied by his wife, the Prime Minister. And then he woke up and realised it was reality. Her Majesty loved the countryside, and she was down to earth and a woman of common sense. I remember one picnic at Balmoral which was taking place in one of the bothes on the estate. The hampers came from the castle and we all mucked in to put the food and drink out on the table. I picked up some cheese, put it on a plate and was transferring it to the table. The cheese fell on the floor. I had a split-second decision to make.
See, Marino, quite going mad. It's quite
I mean, the bar is so enjoyable. I personally wasn't that impressed with that. I think she was funny when she was talking about running through fields of wheat. But look, she did.
But she wasn't trying to be funny when she went on about fields of wheat. She was trying to be like fun.
That was right,
wasn't
funny. That was alright.
Yeah, just
highlight.
No, I know what you mean. Also, what was she said when we had a picnic in the Boffers in the garden, the castle? The Boffers. What's a Boffer? What
It's
what you talking about?
people, place that posh people go to.
When we had a bother. I mean, I know what you mean. My brother-in-law was like, she's making jokes about dropping cheese. I don't get it. But okay. I just thought, I don't know. It was a little Theresa May moment for me.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I mean, no, a few did. I mean, there were a few lefties giving her credit. There's a guy, Sam Knight, at St. Sam 18, tweeted, Theresa May has just delivered a great speech. There's something I never thought I'd say. And just watched Boris's farewell speech. One gets the feeling that forcing him out of number 10 may not have been the best idea. Yes, he is a serial liar. They all are. He can't denies by being a clown and breaking COVID rules. I guess people are not too sure Liz is the answer. Sorry, what? They all are. He's a serial liar. They all are. All being who, Alan? Like politicians?
Sir Alan.
Marmalade sandwiches.
She's got her bum out.
Oh my goodness, she was asking mourners, this television, the BBC show, to stop leaving Paddington Bears and marmalade sandwiches in honour of the Queen. Like, there was actually too much. Still thinking about the movie.
Lynn, what's your views? What stood out to you from the State of the Union address? Were you impressed?
Well, it's a mixed bag, honestly. So I am very happy to hear so many strong words on energy security and sovereignty and democracy and rule of law. But on the other hand, I just had this feeling that if this speech had come like 10 years ago, we would have been in a much better situation. So we all knew that we have to focus on moving away.
everybody back up in the building. It's been a minute, tell me how you're healing. Cause I'm about to get
kościowo-ortodoksyjnego. Rasta, a więc zwolennicy ruchu, cenili etiopski kościół jako wolny od kontroli białych ludzi, jednak w większości woleli zachowywać samodzielną, otwartą strukturę. Gdy Haile Selassie I odwiedził Jamajkę w 1966 roku, był zaskoczony. Zdawał sobie sprawę, że dla wielu Jamajczyków jest boskim wysłannikiem, wcieleniem Jezusa, Bogiem, ale reakcja...
Wznowić to działanie, czyli postawić krajowi drugie referendum. No i taką właśnie cezurą, i to już było zapowiadane między innymi przez byłego premiera Malcolma Turnbulla, który powiedział, że po zakończeniu rządów Elżbiety II może dojść do rozpisania kolejnego referendum korespondencyjnego, w którym mieszkańcy kraju wypowiedzieliby się na temat zmiany formy rządów, właśnie z monarchii.
Metallica, o paliwie, które stało się najważniejszym obecnie tematem i który będzie przewijał się w różnych rozmowach dzisiaj w raporcie o stanie świata. Zaczynamy od wizyty w Samarkandzie w Uzbekistanie rosyjskiego prezydenta i nie tylko. Władimir Putin spotkał się tam z prezydentem Chin Xi Jinpingiem pierwszy raz osobiście od czasu inwazji na Ukrainę w lutym. Rosyjski prezydent podziękował za zrównoważone, jak to nazwał, stanowisko Pekinu wobec Ukrainy.
Islamskiego, który mógłby oddziaływać negatywnie właśnie na Xinjiang.
A jak patrzą na obecną sytuację inne państwa regionu, o których mówiliśmy w formie no jednak dość przedmiotowej, jako przedmiot polityki, czy to Rosji, czy Pekinu, jak przed chwilą pan to zarysował, czy one w ogóle mają szansę na jakąkolwiek podmiotowość? Nawet jeżeli mówimy o takim kraju jak Kazachstan.
Znaczy, one są podmioty.
Mogliby być już usatysfakcjonowani tymi terytoriami, które dostały się pod ich kontrolę. No ale oczywiście nowy wymiar konfliktu stworzył nowe wyzwania, czy też nowe cele. Przez ostatnie 2 lata toczonych negocjacji, rozmów, które tak trochę oddzielnie, ale były prowadzone i przez Rosję, i przez Unię Europejską, i uwidoczniły się 3 główne czynniki, które nie pozwalały Ormianom i Azerom się dogadać, które były najważniejszą kością niezgody. Jednym z tych czynników stała się kwestia utworzenia drogi, która miała formy czasami. Konflikt między państwem a Mapuczami czy Araukanami. I ponad połowa Chilijczyków według sondażu uważa, że wzrost przemocy jest największym problemem w tej chwili w kraju. Ta konstytucja nie odnosiła się do tego. Być może to również spowodowało, że ludzie mieli wątpliwości co do jej przyjęcia.
Dokładnie tak, no to jest taka kwestia, która rzeczywiście też mocno wybrzmiała, była podbijana niejako przez tę negatywną narrację.
Or a computer or something else can control the vibration. And use it as a means of communication.
It's basically a way to send him information remotely.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah. And that has that is a known thing in cheating. When somebody places a device upon their body and it gives them a shock or a vibration, a pulse or something, that is very well established that people have done that in the past. But
do you think that it's like there's no evidence that he cheated? That means he's a really good cheater because he had something inserted up his butt. You know, it's just that's not a very compelling argument.
But it is technically feasible. You can communicate with very little information. I think it's like 3 or 4 characters for any given chess move. Yeah, it wouldn't take. So that can be done. But yeah, you're right. I mean,
well, right. Every piece Yeah, that's right. Every piece has a designation, a letter number combination. So
I think we've done this once or twice before. Is it real? Right? Is the segment? Is it real? Have you guys all seen the YouTube video of the ear snake?
Oh yeah.
I was going to watch it and then I realized I don't want to see whether it's fake or not. I don't want to see a snake come out of somebody's ear. It's a high creep factor. It's definitely like a horror movie. Glad I didn't see it.
Well, it's
right now.
Snakes is a natural fear, Steve, or the brain we have a discussion towards fear of snakes.
Found that 98% of the H-com bacterial species colonized and stayed stable and balanced over 2 months, which is pretty sweet. But they really were just getting started, though, nowhere near the end. Next was the stage to make H-com more robust, right? So to do that, they took advantage of a interesting theory called colonization resistance. So that means if I, for example, say distracted Jay and introduced a new bacterium into his established colony.
There is like a voice behind it almost. And if you've never seen someone play a mouth harp, you should look for it. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool what you can do with the instrument.
How hard is it to use?
I don't think it's that hard.
Really?
I really don't. I mean, I used to have one when I was a kid. I used to get noise out of it. It's to get really good at it. I don't know. I honestly don't know how good can you get at one of these.
I played a mean kazoo.
Yeah, I've played that before. It's not hard.
Of pavement the size of dinner plates and the odd rusty beer can. By mid-2018, Nietzsche had reached a conclusion about Bulldog's operation. It was, in his view, an ingenious and epic achievement. It was also, he believed, wildly illegal. Bulldog had flipped Romania's trash conundrum on its head. Rather than a foreign waste broker flooding the country with garbage.
So much corruption. One of the most corrupt countries in the whole of Asia is Cambodia. And when you have a very repressive small elite, Hun Sen, the Prime Minister, his family, his friends, they are the ones who, A, represent the government, or are part of the government, or the state, army, etc. B, they are the ones who are doing the logging, doing the filling in of lakes, building hydroelectric dams, where you're not really going to get any electricity out of them. So they were doing both things. I'm like, you're not going to achieve anything.
A politician, and still is a politician from Cambodia, her name is Mu Sokua. And one of the things she told us is that there was a point in the history of Cambodia that the Khmer Rouge decided that they would reset the nation, that they would start Cambodia over when they had taken over. And one of the things they did is that they got rid of all the educated people. In fact, they persecuted them in some way, were murdered. Did you find during your...
Have you found this podcast?
back to school time, and parents across North America are wasting millions of hours schlepping their children to and from school in cars. Here in Brooklyn, New York, where the streets are once again gridlocked with school drop-offs, every horn honk reminds us that life would be better if students could safely ride to school on bicycles. Fortunately, our friends at Cleverhood are here to help make that happen. Their rain capes and
put the technology in white supremacists.
you are geofenced from
border. They get close to the thing and they go, ooh.
The border looks like the map of the United States. Stay out.
But so our real vacation-y trip this summer, though, was to Quebec City. We sent the kids off to summer camp, and then my wife Joanne and I, we went up to Quebec City, which I'd never been to Montreal. Quebec City is really cool. I don't know if you guys are aware of this.
Przerosła nawet dyktaturę Somozy. To, co przeżyliśmy i co przeżywamy w naszym kraju, nie
smakuje mi właśnie lukrecja. Ona ma jakiś taki, nie wiem, takie śliskie wrażenie robi w ustach, tak na migdałkach się osadza i na podniebieniu. Taki śluzg, taki glut. Nie wiem, ale wiem, że to jest tylko wrażenie, a nie realny glut. W sensie lukrecja jakoś tak się osadza w tym gardle i one tak bardzo się stają dziwne po prostu. Też tak macie? Chryste, w ogóle są takie herbaty pukka, bardzo modne w ogóle, wszyscy je piją. W każdej kawiarni w Reykjaviku te herbaty są.
Well, I mentioned women, peace and security as one of the things that we will, of course, also fight for.
I remember covering, I'm from Ireland myself, when Ireland was running for the council, they brought in Riverdance, they had Bono, any glamorous kind of Danish celebrities being roped in to help win over, or are you just going with your diplomatic charm and heft?
Well, first of all, I want to commend Ireland, but we will hopefully also engage with humour.
We use the cotton bag for it to be responsible for a lower carbon dioxide emission, or for it to take up less space in landfill, or require less water than relying on disposable plastic bags. And for different measures of environmental impact, you're going to need to reuse the cotton bag a different number of times. So what was the metric that threw up this huge figure where you have to use an organic cotton bag 20,000 times to break even with using disposable plastic bags?
The should figure around net government cash flow from petroleum activities. Now, for 2022, this is estimated at around $90 billion US. And if we compare that with the history, the 5-year average pre-Ukrainian invasion was just 25 billion. So a really substantial increase. And if we now look at that's in pound terms, that's
bad news and economic good news. The bad news is that the value of the pound is extremely low. The good news is that, well, according to the headlines, it was even lower in the 1980s.
Pound hits lowest since 1985 as cost of living crisis spikes.
Pound hits 37-year low against dollar as UK recession fears mount.
Well, that doesn't sound great, especially not if you want to buy something that are American. But I wanted to get behind the headline. Yes, perhaps even more.
very quickly from the pandemic. It's got very high inflation in a sort of historical context, and whereas a lot of Britain and Europe's inflation is to do with high energy prices, in America it's because of a very hot jobs market, domestically generated.
Właśnie w tym takim skupisku dużo takich sklepów przenosiło się właśnie w to miejsce. Ale to jest zajść jeszcze tutaj na będzie przy cmentarzu, nie?
There were a lot of people in tears. There were a lot of people who did take it as a personal criticism. George Osborne disappeared. You didn't see him again until the following Monday. The Prime Minister resigned. So by 9:30 a.m. on the day of the biggest political shock in modern British history, we didn't have a Chancellor because he'd gone AWOL, but the Prime Minister had just resigned. It was kind of bizarre. The adult, the supervising adult for the financial system was Governor Mark. Once he was secure as PM, Johnson dropped his attacks on anti-Brexiters and Whitehall. Peerages were quietly doled out and whips restored. Peace was made with number 11. Once Johnson became Prime Minister, one Mandarin told me, he actually worked well with the Treasury. Key to this improved relationship was the fact that the Treasury and its new Chancellors, Javid and then Sunak, accepted Johnson's Brexit and big spending agendas. After the 2019, it also had to cover gaps in trade policy, tariffs, financial services regulation and competition policy. Under Nicholas Macpherson, Treasury headcount had been steadily reduced to just under 1,200 people. Expanding to deal with the new functions pushed that back up to over 2,000. And, as with previous crises, with many urgent demands on government funds, the Treasury's hand was strengthened by holding the purse strings. Whatever Johnson and other cabinet ministers thought of
się w tych zasadach, nakazach, zakazach ciągle poruszać, ciągle musisz, jak rozumiem, zachowywać pewną czujność, żeby nie przekroczyć tego, czego przekraczać nie powinieneś.
Nie, to nie tak działa, bo my w judaizmie mamy te wszystkie rzeczy, o których mówisz, przewidziane. My mamy ustalone pewne zasady, czego nam robić nie wolno. Natomiast wolność istnieje jak najbardziej, tylko musisz rozumieć granice wolności. Nikt tobie nie zabrania dobrze się bawić. Uwierz mi, Paweł.
Bo nawet Wiesna, czyli ta organizacja, która tuż po orędziu wzywała do protestów powszechnych, masowych wieczorem w dzień orędzia, oni wzywają do sprzeciwiania się nie wojnie jako takiej, tylko oni się sprzeciwiają powszechnej mobilizacji. Ich oświadczenie jest taki
straszliwych masakr i boję się, że tym razem też tak będzie, ale no, czy te masakry będą w stanie ludzi po prostu uziemić i jednak spowodować, że oni się przestraszą i po prostu już nie wyjdą po raz kolejny na ulicę, no tego nie jestem w stanie przewidzieć.
Jeszcze na koniec chciałem spytać Pani o opinię na temat takiej może marginalnej historii, a może nie. Główna korespondentka i znana prezenterka telewizji CNN, Christiana Manpool,
Trianą i myślę, że Viktor Orban zdaje sobie sprawę doskonale, jakby wprowadzając temat Trianą do polityki, ale też rozmawiamy w ciekawej sytuacji powyborczej, chociaż wiem, że te wybory były prawie przed pół roku, ale w parlamencie jest partia Michozang, czyli skrajnie prawicowa partia Nasza Ojczyzna, która na sztandarach ma nawet nie tyle rewizję granic, ale unieważnienie traktatu, mówiąc wprost. W związku z tym to jest ciekawa tematyka, która w zależności od tego, jakby się wzmacniało to środowisko, być może zmusiłaby Fidesz do tego, żeby coś z tym tematem zrobił, być może wysłał jakieś zapytanie, żeby ten temat dalej utrzymywać.
W tym tygodniu mówiło się o tym, że Unia Europejska chce zablokować miliardy euro, które miały dostać Węgry z funduszy ze względu na problemy z praworządnością. Komisja Europejska zdecydowała, że zarekomenduje Radzie Unii Europejskiej wstrzymanie wypłaty środków z 3 programów. To jest około 7,5 miliarda euro. To bezprecedensowa
zdrowia psychicznego i perspektywy psychospołecznej do niektórych kwestii społecznych i kierowania tych ludzi do prawników lub służby zdrowia i tym podobnych instytucji. A w wielu przypadkach
nawet pomagania im w powrocie na miejsce, aby mieli jak największe poczucie normalności, jeśli chodzi o jakieś problemy społeczne, spowodowane na przykład utratą żywiciela rodziny w wyniku konfliktu. Mówię o projektach, które przez lata oferowaliśmy im w formie małych grantów czy inicjatyw.
Refugees have been stagnant and obviously Brexit doesn't help, but George Osborne, way before Brexit, he cut taxes every single year to so-called stimulate growth for about 10 years, and we didn't. We've had shit growth.
Doesn't work. We keep proving it time and time again. How many times have we keeping the same bloody thing?
Yeah, and so what Kwasi Kwarteng done is just gone, whoa, he's like inflated the economy, and he's also stopped billions of pounds coming into the treasury by just
Za nami, czy
Za nami, tak, za nami z tyłu.
A, teraz dopiero.
And the neglectful gardener at Reboot GB tweeted, "I've long thought that think tank is a misnomer, more like don't think tank. And frankly, he's got a good point."
Yeah, so for some reason I found myself reading those articles at 4 a.m. I think my little one had stirred or something.
We've been known to get a grip. Our lifestyles are out of hand.
I think something's happened. Yeah, I think I do worry that we're too.
Co?
Crisis, and I was very struck by this, having grown up in Merseyside in the 1960s where the streets were littered with dogs. This seemed indicative of what seemed to be a remarkable change, and from that the project blooms. And so the other issues in the book, which are drinking, smoking, other things we may come on to, were really things that I thought quotidian everyday matters that everyone in one way or another can relate to.
I mean, there were originally a whole lot of protests, weren't there, about this idea of clearing up dog mess and everything, but I mean,
concerns, health concerns around toxocariasis, and particularly concerns about what might happen to children if they got dog mess on their eyes, was then picked up by, surprisingly enough, Burnley Council, who decided that they would act upon this and sort of overreacted and decided to ban dogs from their public parks, which in turn caused a social reaction. It was a kind of tipping point in which, slowly but surely, something which, as it were, weeds dodged around